Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Gray Area here on the Black Men Unfiltered Network. My name is Mr. Bennett. My partner, Peter, is running late tonight. He's taking care of some family business, so hopefully he'll be with us later this evening. But again, we appreciate you guys being on here tonight. So again, as you come in, make sure you hit the like button as you come in tonight. And as you can see scrolling at the bottom of the screen, you see our cash apps, our individual cash apps. Certainly we appreciate any support that you may give us in that time, but also make sure that make sure consider dropping a super chat to the Black Men Filter Network that is streaming this now. Hopefully, we'll be streaming it simulcast to the Spark HQ Network as well. Make sure you go there, like, and also subscribe. We've had some excellent shows over the last few weeks, and certainly, I think that show is certainly worth your time. So again, I'm flying a little bit solo here for the time being. Just got a message from him, so again, hopefully, we'll join him late, and he'll join us a little bit later. And I figured, well, rather than trying to cancel the show last minute, I figured let's just go ahead with the show. And this is going to be hopefully a discussion, especially when it gets here. But hopefully this is not to judge anyone's parenting standards. It's certainly not meant to castigate anyone's personal experience. So again, we're dealing with a heavy hitter tonight. We're dealing with corporal punishment. And, certainly in these spaces, there's been certainly a lot of discussions on the need for corporal punishment, whether or not it should be used or not. Some people who are vehemently in favor of it. Some people think that we need to use more of it. We need to go back to the old days. And I'm very familiar with the scriptures that say, spare the rod, spoil the child. I'm certainly well aware of that. Certainly I grew up with that. And, so certainly that's certainly it can be a very touchy topic with people because, again, certainly you have a right as a parent to discipline your children. But how you go about it, certainly people are starting to choose in many sections of the world. It's not just the United States, but it's across the world. People are choosing different parenting methods that don't facilitate that activity. So me personally, I've never used corporal punishment with my children. I have 3 daughters. My youngest one is 21. And if anything, I could probably count on one hand the number of times I might have slapped them on the butt or what have you. And I asked my wife, since she was, certainly with them a lot when they were young. She was home. She was a stay-at-home mom for 6 years before she went back to the work world. And she barely used it all. So either a hand or she told me that she would use a pluck that she would use. So she would take and just pluck them, and that would get their attention or change the behavior or what have you. But, certainly both of us are very familiar with it. We grew up with it. I've been hit pretty much with everything from my mother, from belts to extension cords to, anything she can kind of get her hand on, the switch. I know all about go and get me a switch about the width of my finger and getting whipped with that. So I'm all familiar with that level of discipline. But, certainly a decision that my wife and I made when we were going to have children that, we were going to look to do things differently. And I think that, at least so far, we've raised 3 successful children. And again, this is going to change on so many levels. One, whether or not you're dealing with girls versus boys. That's certainly a discussion that has been had. Certainly different ethnic groups have different views on corporal punishment. Your religious values, what you believe and whom you worship. Certainly those also have big time consequences on your views on the use of corporal punishment. And then obviously you have degrees of corporal punishment. So again, in my era, if you're Gen X or younger, or maybe a later millennial, you remember basically getting hit with everything with the kitchen sink. And a lot of times it was first order. There wasn't a discussion, and you would be hit by things that, by just back talking, as you say, that could get you a whooping, so to speak. So, certainly this has been something that has been really raised, certainly in recent times. And I remember distinctly, and a lot of people may remember this, some time back, there was a big case that came out with the football player, Adrian Peterson, certainly of the Minnesota Vikings at the time. And he was caught in a situation where he had used corporal punishment with his young son. I forget how old the son was, but when the son was returned back to his mom, she noticed that he had these bruises on him. And when he was examined she took him to the hospital, and by the time they looked at him, he had welts and things in his scrotum and in different parts of his body. And he was basically called out for that. And long story short, he was actually suspended by the NFL for a number of weeks for that. And then that opened up the whole can of worms as far as, look, you can't tell me how to discipline my child, and again, that generational divide that a lot of times that we talk about, certainly those are things that that have been discussed. And so this is, again, a very complex, very in-depth topic and subject. And so, again, hopefully, when Peter comes here, he can certainly give his experiences. Basically, what I'm going to do is I just want to paint a global picture, as I'm known to do, as far as, what globally, what's been said about corporal punishment and the changes in societies, not just this society, but around the world, when it comes to corporal punishment, and maybe even challenging some of the ideas we may have towards corporal punishment. Again, I'm not going to judge what you do. I'm just going to show maybe some data on what, statistically what is said about it. Again, that does not negate anyone's personal experience. I know people who are vehemently saying, look, if it wasn't for beatings, I wouldn't be here, that I wouldn't be alive, that I would be in prison or in jail. My only pushback on that is that you have certainly a lot of people within the prison industrial complex who have had corporal punishment applied to them. And so, so again, everyone can talk from their anecdotal, but I like to give some perspective. Now, again, I mean, especially these days, it gets harder sometimes as well to deal with, what the data is saying, because a lot of times we get, the data sometimes isn't trusted anymore. And so, for a lot of people, they'll say, well, you looked that up at that particular website or address or whatever, or you can't trust that data, or that the data is skewed in a certain way. And so, so there's always going to be that, divide as far as how people treat the data. And, I'm not expecting you necessarily to be affected by the data. But, certainly, again, it gives a perspective, and you can certainly have the right to refute it or go with, go with a different perspective. And some people, again, get dug in to say, oh, well, I'm, even more so, I should go the other way, without at least considering the consequences, again, of what the data is saying. So that's kind of going to be the perspective tonight. Again, this is not going to be a call-in type of show. We're not going to be taking calls, but we are going to have a call-in show next week. So if we want to revisit this topic and talk about, what has been shared, what has been talked about, your personal experiences, pro and con, when it comes to the use of corporal punishment in today's world and society. Again, you might be like, we need to go back to the old days, and I totally get that. That opinion is certainly out there, and I respect it. But certainly other people are starting to look at things in different ways, and so maybe we can have a broader discussion on its use, and maybe something that we can start to think a little bit differently on. So with that, just want to share some data on the use of corporal punishment, and what some of the things that are coming out regarding corporal punishment that I've seen just in the research that I did leading up to the show. Just going to share my screen. And so let's talk about some of this. So what we're seeing here, there's a website in corporal punishment, and what they're doing is they gather statistical data throughout the world in terms of corporal punishment and its use. Now, again, we also have to remind ourselves that what a state or body may do oftentimes has a little impact on what people do individually within their communities, and especially within their homes. So just because a state or government makes something legal or illegal, again, people are still going to follow their conscience, and they're not necessarily going to be captured by what data is saying in a particular matter. But here we have, for example, in the continent of Africa, there have been several states in Africa that have banned the use of corporal punishment. All right. So again, and we see the dates by which it's been covered. So again, the areas that in purple, where it's either not prohibited at all. The dark green, obviously it's still widely used or prohibited in some areas, but not everywhere. And so you see a breakdown in the years with which certain states have banned the use of corporal punishment in the society. Now, again, we're also, when you look at this, you also have to sort of take it with a grain of salt, because we don't know what the enforcement mechanisms are. So again, can a parent go to jail or pay a fine for their use of corporal punishment? That data or that information we don't know. But certainly, there's certain cases where sometimes the laws do change attitudes and opinions when you know what you can and can't do, or at least parents are going to be more cautious about how they use or what they choose to employ. So we see here in Africa different prohibitions on its use over time. You also have in South Asia and Asian Pacific. So Thailand, I believe, is the latest country, and again, Thailand has been known for its use of corporal punishment, even in its law enforcement system. So we've seen instances and circumstances where you break the law, you do something you're not supposed to be doing. Guys will come out with batons and whips and whip you right there in public. I mean, Thailand is kind of strict in that regard, but we've certainly seen that. We've certainly seen that as well. But Thailand was the latest. But again, in recent years, several countries have started to prohibit the use of corporate punishment, at least on a state or government level. Then you also have in Europe. So again, in many European countries, including Greece, that there's prohibitions in this case in all settings. So using it in schools, I know Peter, when he was growing up, he said they would certainly in the schools, they would certainly use it as a form of discipline. And you're certainly seeing here that in many European and Norwegian countries, its use has been severely hampered and limited in its time. But in the former Soviet Union, Russia, again, it's prohibited in some settings, but we can certainly assume that it's widely used. And to the right, you see here in different states in different countries where prohibitions in one form or another have been applied to the country. And so the idea is that certainly people have started at least thinking about things differently. I mean, you may still use corporal punishment, but maybe not in the way that your mother used it or your father used it back in the day. You might not use a belt anymore, but you may use something else. But certainly views across the world are changing, and legislation's being done to at least try to limit its use in these countries. Here in the Middle East, I mean, and this is also to be expected, certainly very few, if any, limitations. There's a small area here where, certainly there's some prohibitions, but again, in Islamic countries, use of corporal punishment and discipline is obviously something that is still widely practiced there. And, so again, no surprises when it comes, and there's very little statistical data outside of this little piece right here that shows any changes or any progress on methods and means to ban corporal punishment. And obviously here in the Americas, so it's interesting enough, I almost thought this would be the other way around, that here you have in a lot of the South American countries, there have been bans that had put in. The latest one was Colombia 2021, and you see here a lot of South American countries have started to put in legislation in place, and you also have the country of Greenland has also put in place. But in America, and Canada, that has very strong Judeo-Christian roots to it, obviously it's still something that is still widely practiced. And so, certainly, so again, and we're going to do a deeper dive into the U.S. as obviously that's where we're from when it comes to that. But again, I just kind of want to have this high level in terms of its use. And now I want to kind of get a little more deeper regarding this idea when it comes to race, especially here in the United States. So there's different factors that are being used here. So again, race as a moderator associated between spanking and child outcomes. This abstract from the National Institute of Health says that really there's no difference in outcomes when it comes to whether you're black or white. It says contrary to the cultural normative perspective, these results demonstrate that spanking is similarly associated with detrimental outcomes for white and black children in the United States. So a lot of the research is saying that corporal punishment has a detrimental effect in the data. But again, you can certainly have your right and defend your use of corporal punishment in your private life. But data is showing that there are some statistics that are showing that we may want to revisit parenting in general, and are there better ways, or there are more effective ways that have a different outcome. Like I said, in my case, I never used it, but obviously we have people who still use it, and this may be also be changing by generation. Baby boomers, Xers, millennials, yeah, but maybe with younger generations, maybe this is a trend that also may continue to foster the change. So again, this was done by, Elizabeth Gershoff and Andrew Grogan Kaler, and this was done, I believe, back in 2016. Okay, so again, corporal punishment in schools. This here is from the Brookings Institute. Again, the prevalence of it, black children or students. So this is corporal punishment in schools. And corporal punishment is still used at a much higher rate in schools as it is used for versus white students. And one of the things I've always asked is that even though it's being used, we have to start asking some questions. Why is it used much more in black communities than it is in white communities? And is it giving the outcomes that we need? Now, again, you can justify it. You can say, well, because of the trauma that we've had in this country, because of the oppression and things we had to overcome, that, it was either us getting beat by our parents or our guardians, or we getting beat by the police or any kind of institution that was against us. So again, people are going to defend a lot of times very feverishly that use of corporal punishment. And again, many people I know, we've spoken to on the panel, that they swear by the fact that that again, for them it was a benefit because it saves them from much more dangerous activities. And even though it seems like the use of it over time here between 2012 and 2018 has gone down significantly, but it's still used much more by blacks, and I would also imagine by Latinos as a means of punishment, both at home and also certainly in the schools. Here's an interesting article that I found, because again, I speak to a lot of, we have a lot of friends who are Nigerian. Obviously, everyone knows Black David. A lot of times we'll have conversations, and, certainly the use of corporal punishment in Nigerian culture or a lot of African cultures is certainly something that is talked about, and again, a lot of times promoted, in the sense that we say that, well, this, again, the mindset is, well, this is the issue with our societies, that we're not using enough corporal punishment, and again, we need to kind of go back to that. But here's an analysis. Now, this is from the Premium Times. This is a Nigerian publication. Okay, so again, the title of the article: "Hitting Children is Not an African Tradition." This was article by, again, Andrew Van Wyck and Jerry Chifamba back in 2019. So again, if we go back to that first slide, we were talking about the idea that, in many states in Africa have started to ban corporal punishment as a means of discipline. So again, South Africa's Supreme Court ruled that corporal punishment at home is unconstitutional. Many parents protested that that's the way they were raised. It's African culture, after all. But is it an African tradition to spank or beat children? And does it produce responsible adults? No, says the data. Physical discipline is not rooted in African culture, but in colonialism. Studies show that hitting children contributes to domestic and community violence and can even reduce a children's intellectual capacity. This is a global problem, and it's also multi-generational. Let's go into another content from the article. It says here, the beating of children was brought to this continent through missionaries. I'm assuming Christian missionaries. I'm assuming Christian white missionaries. And missionary schools, said Sonia Vojito of the Global Initiative to End All Corporal Punishment of Children. And the custom became entrenched across the continent. Pre-colonial means of discipline should be remembered and applied, but again, it doesn't necessarily say how it was done. So again, you can look at that, you can raise an eyebrow at that. Well, if you didn't use it, was standing in a corner, for example, a means of discipline. By another author here, Carol Brower of the Quaker Peace Center, agrees from all records that we can find physical discipline of children was not in African culture, before slavery. But nevertheless, though, it's still widely used. A report by the Africa Child Policy Forum, based in Ethiopia, says that, again, found that most African children experience physical violence in schools, an estimated 92% in Togo, 71% in Ghana, 60% in Kenya, and 55% in Senegal. So for its use, is it stemming violence, or is it creating violence? Again, that's certainly a question that we have to ask ourselves regarding its use. And again, is it effective? Certainly in the society. And then here again, another National Institute of Health article talking about, again, more harm than good, summary of the scientific research and the unintended consequences and unintended effects of corporal punishment on children. So I just kind of took bits and pieces from it, but you're certainly free to look up the article. Certainly in replay, you can certainly find these articles printed. But again, unintended effects, again, physical injury and abuse, mental health problems, erode the quality of a children's relationship with their parents, reduce cognitive ability, and that piece really kind of struck my interest. So I grabbed a clip from that section of the summary. It says, study of middle school age children found that those who were physically punished by their parents scored significantly lower on a brief measure of IQ than children who were not, with children whose parents physically punished them frequently exhibited the lowest levels of IQ. So again, the article from the Nigerian newspaper also cited that, again, lower IQ, and this article is saying also lower test scores, and a similar finding with younger children, 1-year-olds whose parents relied on corporal punishment had significant lower scores on a standardized test of mental abilities than children whose parents used corporal punishment rarely or never. So again, another case citing its use. And then I'll just lastly go here. Now, as I said earlier, I remember this story distinctly because, usually with the NFL, you're usually hearing stories about people who either, you got into a drug problem, or there was a violent action, or there was something that, good evening, Mariana, thanks for joining us tonight. Usually, again, something with a woman, just some, off the field behavior that is typical of, some of these players and whatnot. But this one really, I remember succinctly, when this came out, again, back in 2014, and the discussions that were being had, where views were really being challenged when it came to the idea of shout out to Braxton, the Snake Fiend. Thank you again for joining us tonight. And yeah, so hopefully I'm flying solo, but hopefully he'll be with us again. He's got to take care of some biz, so hopefully he's he's doing fine, but he's just running a bit behind. But again, this really struck a chord, at the time, because no player, if there was like a DV issue, it was typically with his partner or with his wife or something like that. And you typically didn't find that with, any sort of children involved. So this is one of the first cases that I saw where a child was impacted by Adrian Peterson. Obviously, he's a legendary running back, a possible Hall of Famer. Again, I don't know if this impacts his Hall of Fame eligibility, but certainly at the time, it definitely created a conversation back over 11 years ago on the use of corporal punishment by people. So again, here 538 did an article, and talking about just the demographics. And again, this is also what makes it complicated, especially here in the United States, because there's so many factors that go into people's views when it comes to corporal punishment. So again, if you look at, your religious beliefs. So again, between born again Christians and not born again Christians. Okay. So I guess, your evangelical branches who have, again, a much more traditional view of the scriptures, that in their view, there's a sense that, again, spare the rod, spoil the child, and they put at the source of the country's downfall and its backsliding and whatnot is that we need to get back to corporal discipline. So again, in those homes, you'll see its use. But again, with more Catholics or Episcopalians or Presbyterians or whatever, maybe certainly much less used in those households. And then you also have the racial component. Blacks, as has been noted earlier, we clearly use corporal punishment more than anybody. But nevertheless, again, the question that we have to ask ourselves is this effective? Is this really working? And should do we need to do things maybe a little bit different when it comes to our parenting, or certainly the use of corporal punishment in parenting? But then you also have, shout out to Jay Speed. So Jay Speed, again, the OG's in the house. He's been back in these BMU spaces. It was great seeing him on Friday night. So again, this is obviously going to be a hotly contested issue. But I'm just sharing information, and hopefully we can have a conversation. But again, this will not be a call-in show, as I said earlier. We typically don't have call-ins during live shows, but we will have a call-in show specifically. We try to have a call-in show at least once a month. So for anyone who wants to join us next week to bring up either this topic or any topics that we've talked about since our last call-in show, you're certainly more than welcome, certainly to join that. So we tell people, make sure you take notes, as you watch our shows. So again, in case that when we come back, we have to, revisit this. We have to revisit this topic again and see if in fact, if people want to rehash some of the content. We have no problem talking about past content on the show. So then you also have, again, political ideology. Oftentimes, talks about, the differences between, parenting techniques. Republicans generally tend to use corporal punishment in more likely than Democrats or independents do. That seems to be that tends to be a statistic. So I think that's towards the end of the slide. So I'll just unshare that. So again, I just wanted to share some of the data. So just in summary, especially for those of you came in late, again, globally, the issue of corporal punishment is being addressed in many states and governments around the world. A lot of governments around the world are prohibiting its use, at least in terms of, even in homes. But, certainly, what impact is that having in these homes at all? Again, we don't know what the enforcement is in these homes. Again, we don't necessarily know. But, certainly, again, these things are certainly being used even today. And again, we certainly have the conversation that's being had. Shout out again to Braxton. It says the belt is what I grew up with, and what's needed now is now in some homes and grade schools. So again, people are definitely going to defend that to the hilt, and they're not going to be moved on that. And for those who came in late, like I said, I've never used corporal punishment with my children, and I know several parents, who haven't. And so, but this is always the conversation, and so again. But certainly I will certainly entertain the chat. Certainly, if you guys have different views on the subject, again, Braxton, even though he's a younger guy, he's still up with that. And shout out to there was a conversation we had with Boss Man some time back, and he employs it certainly in his home, and certainly there's a way that he goes about doing it as well. So again, different parenting philosophies. Like I said, I remember. Say growing up with it. Now I also had the additional complication of having a mother who was not well mentally, and so I'm not saying that there were beatings that I may have gotten that I didn't deserve, but I can certainly remember the ones that I didn't deserve, because whatever the reason for the beating was, it didn't come out of any set of facts, but it was things that were idealized or imagined. And so, certainly I had, I would say more than my fair share. Again, extension cords, belts, you named it. I have, welts, black and blue marks. Certainly I have some of the scars to, still remember those things. My wife, not so much. Again, this is also maybe a difference between how girls and boys are raised, because she comes from 6. And so I asked her, even when I started to prep for this show, I had asked her that, well, was corporal punishment used in a home? And she said, for the girls, no. The mom was also the primary disciplinarian, even though the father was in the house at least for a time. But again, to support 6 kids, he worked, and then he took a second job. He drove the taxi cab, so he really wasn't around a whole lot to discipline the children. And so, so the mother was the primary disciplinarian. And so when it came to corporal punishment, she can't remember ever getting a beating from the children. But certainly for the boys, there's 2 sons and 4 sisters. For the boys, absolutely. And she even remembers some of those beatings that the brothers had gotten. But again, for boys, a lot of people may have a different philosophy when it comes to that. Sons, you may believe that sons need that, but certainly she remembers the boys getting their fair share. And so certainly, but again, when we decided we were going to have children, again, we wanted to do things a little bit differently. And so again, it was just something that wasn't used. Shout out to J Speed again. So your results will always tell you the truth. All of us have had corporal punishment, and look at our results. Certainly, that's gonna vary, because again, you can have 2 people who grow up in similar, different outcomes, but had the same things apply. Like I said, you have prison populations where it's been used and sometimes overused, and then you have cases where it hasn't been. People who grow up to be what we would consider normal functioning adults, and again, in some cases was used, and in some cases it wasn't. So again, certainly, when you try to do metadata on these, it may point to another. It may point to another outcome, and that's another reason why I had the articles when it talked about the its use in Africa, because again, especially around Black people, whether it be African Americans or Africans native to Africa, it's a staple, and people again defend it to this day. But the article done by journalists in Africa said that again, before colonialization, it wasn't used, or that there's no evidence that it was used to certainly a large degree, that it was brought to Africa by Christian missionaries who brought that form of discipline to Africa, and it just became a norm and used throughout the continent. Again, how true or not, again, that is certainly to be discussed. But that's where it's at. So again, the belt, the switch, yes, the house shoes, all a great communication tool. So again, so Braxton is certainly certainly that guy, and certainly it was handed out equally in my experience. Absolutely. And it said they whip you into college into college planning down in the Caribbean. Also, yeah, I mean it's certainly throughout. As Young is saying here again, not all children require the same punishment. Absolutely. It's not it's not an end all be all, and certainly sometimes it was a lot of times it was the first order of punishment. Like it wasn't used as a last resort. Sometimes it was the first result physical. But I remember friends of mine in college, we used to talk about their dad. He would just hit them for anything. He would just hit them, just as a constant thing. And so in those things again, they still carry and remembered. But again, they decided to parent differently. I don't recall them talking about they had to use a lot of corporal punishment with their children. They just had a structure. They had a stable environment. They had a stable home. They kept their kids active, and they held them to high expectations. And and again, I know, and it's across the world. I work in the IT field, so I work with Asian Indians, and they all talk about when growing up, beatings was a thing. But if you was to ask them, did they beat their kids when they moved to America? They built lives in America here. Did their use of corporal punishment? At least not to the same degree. So it's not to say they might not have used it on occasion, but certainly not to the idea where it was just like a constant thing used all the time, and certainly not with the tools, I guess, that were used. Again, spanking on the butt, using the hand or what have you, maybe, but switches and belts and cords and all those sort of things, certainly, a lot of them, and I've had conversations throughout the years on this, that, for, I guess, young Gen Xers and younger millennials, not nearly to the degree. And like I said, some people may say that that's the problem with society, that we need to get back to this sort of discipline of children. And, that's a raging discussion, but certainly I maybe I can ask the chat and you guys kind of chop this up. What would you say would then be too far? I guess if you wanted to contrast between abuse and non-abuse, at what point would you consider it abusive? Either in the implementation of it or in the frequency of it. What would you say is the where is your limit then? If there is one, is there an age range? So like one of the articles that I talked about, their age range was between 5 and 14. Do you think before 5 is too young? After 14 is too old? Do you put limits on that? So, certainly that would be, those would be some items I would certainly be interested in. And I had a video that I was running to get up before the show. And like I said, I don't have Peter here to back me up. So I'm kind of trying to find some information, maintain the chat at the same time, as well as keep an eye out for Peter if and when he's able to appear tonight, and to have this conversation. But again, for those of you who are coming in later to the show, again, welcome once again to the gray area. Again, I'm going solo tonight until my partner, hopefully he gets here. But again, the issue is corporal punishment tonight, and again, this is a hot topic, and a lot of people who are very much for it, and those who are vehemently against it. And certainly there's movements around the world to end its use as a primary method of discipline of children. And there's going to be a variety of views, certainly on that. Again, Braxton, the snake fiend coming in, saying that episode of Good Times when tried to befriend the bully. Yes, I remember that show, and he certainly introduced him to the strap. Absolutely. And so you had that method, and then you had the Cosby method. I don't recall Cosby laying the wood on his kids. So again, different times, different circumstances. Again, where you grow up matters. If you're growing up in a violent project type environment like the Evans family did, does that have a an impact on its use. Because again, you could be talking about, you may have to overcorrect, so to speak. Because again, in that kind of environment, a wrong move here or there could be the end of your life. So again, as a parent, I may say, look, I would rather use corporal punishment on you, and I would rather give you the beating versus a cop or a gang member or something to that effect. So again, sometimes your environment may dictate its use more so than growing up in suburban New York in a posh environment. And what about wealth? What about income? What about income disparities? Do those matter when it comes to you know when it comes to its use of discipline? And I was able to find the video, and so what environment does that have? But really, again, part of what I was talking about was outcomes, and I found this video. This is by Peaceful World Schoolers, and she had cited some stats. Some of these I may have put in the video or not, but certainly I can certainly drop the link to the video in the chat, and certainly you're free to certainly look up the video or potentially even certainly go and look at some of the study statistics out there. But I found the video interesting, so let me see if I can share my screen and share this video. And so she talks about again some of the disparities by race when it comes to parenting, but also what the results are particularly showing in that regard. So let me see if I can get this to see if I can share this real quick. And I actually reached out to her, and she actually did give me rights to share the video, but I will put up, just for safekeeping, I will put up the fair use banner. But before I share this, so let me see if I can get this to share on the screen. And let's see if I can get this to play. I'll end it there. Um, Take it off the screen. So again, you could look at all of that and say bunk all that data. You know how you were raised. You know what works and what didn't work. And so, you could poo poo all of that. But again, it is, I think, worth a discussion. There is movement in societies across the world on its use, and questions about its overall effectiveness. And just because we have people who say, well, I turned out okay and I got it, does that mean, is it a practical means by which it goes forward? You guys couldn't hear that? Put a link in the chat again if you didn't hear that. If not, I'll try to replay that video. I'm not sure why you guys weren't able to do that. Let me add it to the so basically what she did was she was just, again, going through the statistics and the numbers. Like I said, I put the data, I put the link in the chat. So you could certainly go back and play the video on your own. But basically what she was doing, she was citing different statistics similar to the ones that I did, citing whether or not the use of corporal punishment is effective and its disproportionate use with African Americans. So the idea is we're 12.2% of the population, but we're, certainly the its use has been overly, hasn't been overly used, and when it comes to violent crime, but again, that's a preponderance of factors. We can talk about systemic racism. We can talk about all kinds of things that have gone on that's led to the violence, certainly from within and also from without. But having said that, even with all those things, is it necessarily a useful tool for today? Again, OG J Speed said they use violence to train us. Do we turn out good? If corporal punishment really worked, we should have the best children on the planet as black people. Yeah, it's kind of what what her article was saying. And again, I'll see if I can go back and play it again. Not sure why you guys weren't able to hear that. But yeah, I mean, we use it more than everyone. But again, are we getting the outcomes that we think we need from that? Shout out to Boss Man's not here. I did reach out to him earlier. Let me see if I can get him to come on. But again, because I'm working all three things here, I'm just going to have to text him directly. I try to grab him quickly before the show. So again, violence and fear stumps children's mental growth. So again, seems like Jay Speed, not sure if he's necessarily pro or for or modified when it comes to corporal punishment. But certainly, certainly I think he's bringing up some good points here. It says maybe if you turned out right, but you didn't turn out to be a genius that God wanted you to be. So again, seems to be very much, citing some good things, or at least things to question. But I'm the one. Yes, because I'm logged in as the host. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, BMU's not here. So I'm logged in with the account, and I'm kind of running the show. I'm kind of a one-man band here. But if you guys can, certainly you guys can still hear me still, correct? Put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me, and if you can't, then I'll definitely look to see if I can fix that. But if you guys can hear me, put a 1 in the chat, and I'll try to see if I can get a was that so why you didn't ask me? Do you want to come up? If you will, again, this is not a call-in show, but if you want to come up and join me on this discussion, you're more than welcome. Put a thumbs up or whatever, and I will send you I'll drop the link in the chat. But again, this okay, I'm doing good. Why are you going to ask me and then you're going to say you're doing good, bro? Yes, all right, cam off. You get the pass. All right. So I will give you, so again, I'm going to drop the link But again, this link is only for Lady Navoa to come up to have the conversation. So just give me a second here. Let me grab the link, and I'm gonna drop it here. So I dropped it in the chat. So Lady Navoa, certainly you're welcome to come up and share the floor, but only her, please, as we have this have this conversation tonight. But who knows? Maybe I might be more generous again. Especially, I want to give. Also, I want to be respectful to Peter. Certainly, if he does come up on the show, then look at that. As soon as I mention his name, look at that. God answers prayer, and so I bring up my partner as always, Peter, on the show. But again, Lady Navoa, you're more than welcome to come up and certainly to give your views and give your 2 cents, certainly on the issue tonight. But again, for anyone else, again, we really want to be respectful of our show format, and we want to keep the show under 2 hours. So, certainly next week when we have our live call-in show, you can come back and bring all the smoke that you want to us on this topic, and we can certainly chop it up some more. But we do have the Queen in the back, Lady Navoa, as always. It is a pleasure to thank you for everything you do for us, certainly in the back chat. Make sure you're monitoring chat and everything, and just supporting us on all these platforms that we be on. And also, Ghost, are you streaming this on yours, or you on your?
No, I didn't get a chance. I'm gonna repost it when this goes live. So
okay,
I will have it on. It's just been a fucked up day.
You don't have to go into deets. First of all, I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad your family's okay, and I'm glad you're here. And that's all we need to. That's all we need to say. But Lady Navoa, how are you? You can unmute yourself. Hello, Lady Navoa, are you there? Can you hear us? We can't hear you. She might be having a problem here. She's unmuted, so hopefully she can. Let me do that. Let's try that. Lady Navoa, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Now we can.
Okay, hey guys. I see that
Hello,
Peter
how are you?
came up already. I was about to jump down because I was like,
you can.
you up here by yourself. You know what I'm saying?
I'm running solo, but that's good. It's good. It's good. It's good working experience. I'm working the controls. I'm kind of learning how all this is because again, once I drop my channel one day and whatnot, so I may want to get into this. So it's just giving me some good education.
Practice.
And yeah. In practice, and so absolutely, so definitely
that would have helped you.
Was that?
You got people in the chat that would have helped you out. You know what I'm saying? Because we understand people got life. You know what I'm saying? And things happen.
Absolutely.
And Peter, he has something going on. Oh, hush. Hi Peter. He's home. He's back. So, but yeah, you know what I meant. So you don't have to be up here by yourself. But I was letting you before I put you doing good. I did that before you said that, and it came in. I was like, oh snap.
Okay.
I'm just letting you know you're doing good.
I appreciate that.
But I'm gonna jump down and let y'all talk, okay?
Okay.
Appreciate you. Get in there. Thanks for coming up. Okay.
There you go. All right, you take care. Have a great day.
At least I showed up for the last half of the show.
Absolutely, yes. You're the closer. So
What did I say to you in my text? I'm gonna make it. It was shine or no shine. Then I said I'll be there no matter what. I never miss a show. Not even if I'm on my deathbed.
Oh, we can't look crazy. First of all, I'm not speaking that. So we're going to rebuke that in time being, not for a very long time. So we're not even going to go there with that. But again, it's good to see you. Hope everything is good. And but definitely, we've been chopping it up on corporal punishment tonight. I'm not sure how much of the show that you have seen or were able to see.
Because I was dealing with other things.
Okay. So I basically, as I said, leading out. Now again, in my household, we didn't use corporal punishment growing up. Now, certainly it was applied to me. I got hit with everything. Again, belts, wires.
Are you saying now? I'm gonna cut you off. Are you saying it doesn't? You don't do it in your parenthood, or your parents didn't do it too much? I'm trying to understand that
No. In growing up, yeah, absolutely. Well, and specifically, it was my mother, because by the time I didn't live with my father until I was 14, and he never used corporal punishment at that time. But from my older siblings, I know that he certainly used corporal punishment with them. But the primary disciplinarian in the house was my mother. And for the time that I lived with my mother, obviously she was the main disciplinarian. And so so growing up in that, and just certainly given her mental problems, like I said, I'm not saying I was a perfect child and that there were certainly some beatings that I did not deserve, but certainly there was a ton that I didn't deserve, in part because of things that were imagined in her mind, and so I got the brunt of it. And so certainly that was the context that I grew up with. My wife, the girls weren't disciplined like that, but the boys were. The boys were, and again, in that case also, the mother was the disciplinarian. God rest her soul. She was the main disciplinarian in the house. She never, to my wife's memory, she never used corporal punishment on the girls, but the boys got it very bad. And so that was a dynamic growing up in that household. But when we decided to have kids, we didn't necessarily want to use as a primary form of punishment corporal punishment. And so I can honestly say I can probably count on one hand the number of times I might have slapped them on the backside or what have you. It's not something that I used. I know Black Man on Friday, he shared a video of these dads going in a school in Louisiana, helping with the violence and the discipline in the school. Just the presence of black men in the school helped to quell a lot of the violence there. And one of the commentators, one of the students there, she talked about the look, that if you're a black parent, you'll know about the look. And certainly I used the look to great impact with my kids. If I was to bring one of them in now, they can tell you what the look looks like. But I certainly would use that, but I never went to the belt switches or anything like that.
Did you ever consider it one time?
But no. And another thing is, again, a lot of people say that, oh, well, yes, you can discipline your kids, but don't discipline them in anger. And again, I'm not saying that there are people who don't have the mental capacity to discipline their children without anger. But in a lot of households, so again, Braxton, he was talking about James Ovens and Good Times back in the day. No, James was angry most of the time. That wasn't necessarily a controlled, raised situation. James was a hothead, and it was actually Florida a lot of times we had to kind of calm him down a lot of times. So again, that whole thing of don't spank your kids in anger. Again, it sounds good, and I'm not saying that people aren't capable of doing that. But how many times has that actually, how practical is that from the times that you have gotten corporal punishment? How many times would your parents, oh, I'm not mad at you, but I got to discipline you.
My parents only? My parents only. Yeah. You're funny. I didn't get beat by my parents only. I got beat by my parents, by my teachers. I got beat by the older ultra boys. I got beat by the neighbors. I got beat by the bus driver. Should I keep going, or that? I think I got the most of it. In Greece, is no such thing as getting beat. It's a saying in Greece. I was never said to this, but like my grandparents, who probably would know the same more than anybody. You can beat him, but don't let him walk out of it. Meaning, you can beat the shit out of him as long as he can walk. I don't care.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, what some fucked up twisted shit is that? Like, your own father, like, yeah, cool. You can beat the shit out of my son, but make sure he walks home at the end of the day. And like, dude, seriously.
Was there like scarring? Was like black and blue marks? Was there visible
I never had
signs
from anybody? Maybe my grandma sometimes, but she was loud. She was my grandmother. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I got the sandal, the rubber sandal. That was the worst one because it has give in it, the cheap ones.
Mm-hmm.
And you got it from a flea market. Oh my god, I hate those fucking things. Yeah. I'm like, I prefer a cube stick. I mean, like you pull cube stick. I got beat with those. I prefer that over a sandal any day of the week. I feel like the older crowds, Dominicans, Latinos, Haitian, whatever, whoever uses sandal, there's a boot camp. I believe it's a boot camp. They won't fucking tell us, but it's a boot camp. A woman goes to boot camp to teach you how to use those goddamn pantoflas. And
they're getting certified in its use, right?
Bro, I literally ducked once and hit the back of the door and hit me behind my head still.
Right.
Like a boomerang. I'm like, the fuck is this kind of shit, man?
Right.
I ducked and I still get hit. But seriously, I got hit with everything from a metal ruler was the worst one for me.
Metal ruler.
My teacher had a broken metal ruler. It was a metal ruler in the middle, and she used to give her hand, whapa. And one of my other teachers, she used to fucking drag us out of the class if we were bad. But her husband, I fucking hate that motherfucker. If I ever see him, I swear to God, I'm going to lay his fat ass down now. Hopefully he's fat now. He used to come in. And he used to get a kick out of it, who was in the front seat, to fuck with him. He used to grab my hair, just like that. A handful. He pulled me up, pulled me down. Pull me up, pull me down. Pull me up, pull me down. For a good 15 seconds. Why? Because he got a kick out of it. Oh, my sideburns? Oh, he used to love pulling those things on me.
Wow.
Because
and he was never. This is in Greece or in the U.S.?
Yeah, in Greece, bro. Teachers are fucked up in Greece. And they complain they don't make enough money.
Wow.
I used to get my ass fucking whooped. For what? Nothing. Like, I wish I fucking cheated. I get my ass. Nope. This guy used to come in my class every day with my teacher's husband. Remember that? And he used to see me. He goes, and like, and came over and he used to fuck with me. At the time, I didn't know any better. I thought it was okay. When I got older, and I was telling my stories with my friend, my mom overheard. I was like, "Well, what happened?" No, that was not okay. I'm like, but I don't like the law. Yeah, I don't give a fuck the law is. Nobody's gonna put your hands on you, except me. And I'm like, well,
yeah. I talked about that earlier in the show. That I went through a series of slides. You know, I'm always sharing data and whatnot. So again, there's campaigns across the world to essentially end corporal punishment as a primary use of discipline in a lot of countries. So again, in Europe, it's mostly banned. So again, I don't know when, as far as Greece, but it seems like Greece has banned the use of corporal punishment in all settings. But again, that's it's a red herring also, because it's like, yeah, you might ban it, at a state level or government level, but again, how can you dictate what goes on in someone's home? And then also it's like, what's the recourse then? If you're found, are you going to fine? Are you really going to hold a parent accountable? If they found using corporal punishment as a primary means, are you going to arrest them? Or are they going to get, jail time or fines or whatever? So again, it may take a while. If this was recent, it may take a while to get down to the point where people stop using it as a primary means of discipline. But certainly there's been attempts across the world, in Africa, in Asia, in North America, to end its use. And again, research is showing, in terms of the data, is showing that again, it's not really that effective as a deterrent to violence or violent behavior. It slows mental and cognitive abilities, and so for all these reasons, the data is showing that, or at least the studies that I cited are certainly showing. And even for people, because we all know and love Black David. He's always talking about use of corporal punishment with Nigerian and Africans, and we don't play that here in Africa. We don't play that here. We're going to use that. But I cited an article that from an African newspaper that basically said that corporal punishment was not a primary use of discipline in Africa until white missionaries came to Africa. When Christianity came to Africa, that the missionaries and their schools, that's when it was used, and then it was implemented throughout. So pre-colonialism, 500 years ago, it wasn't there was no evidence to cite that it was a major primary means of punishment. But certainly, a lot of Africans would cite, oh yeah, we beat our children. It's almost romanticized to a degree. But I want to go back and I want to cite, again, I got to get caught up with the chat. Here, no, Jay Speed, who's, really drops a commentary tonight. So he says he did corporal punishment for 3 of my children, and 2 of them I did not see a major difference. I went back and apologized to 3 of my children. So again, this was something that that he had used, but then came to a point where he didn't think that, I guess, it was useful, and he actually went back and apologized for its use. So again, he's at this point in his life. And again, that generation that grew up, again, if you're baby boomer or Gen X, I mean, we all remember that. We all, have gone through that. But people, certainly in future times are starting to use less of it, certainly when it comes to discipline, to come over or to take that outside to the restroom. Bad not act up in church service. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly, these are things that are very familiar. If you act up in church as a kid, yeah, you were going to get it. Some you would get it right in church. Sometimes you would go outside. Absolutely.
I know 2 parents. All right, 2 different stories. So pay attention really carefully what I'm going to say. The first parent will say, an Indian woman will say, "Yo, if you don't fucking clean your room, we're going to hands are going to be thrown. Simple as that." And they was straight through. They will clean the hands. And I looked at her like, you're not scared of the fucking thing. They're going to call the state on your fucking ass. It goes, oh, they can. And then they're right. They will, if they want to, go ahead. But after I beat the shit out of them for calling the state, let's talk about it. I go, I see a good point. She raised them pretty good. I'm not denying that, whatever. The other one, Italian woman, her son called me an idiot. And I looked at her like, oh, I'm going to slap the shit out of him so fucking hard. He's going to become a sperm again. She goes, he will call the state on his own mother. Absolutely no problem. So she knows she backhands him. She's going to knock on the door the same day, probably.
Yeah.
Charge use. So how do you win when the kids have more power than the parents? How do you win? Let's say the discipline is so bad, you have to discipline them. And that's the best way to do it.
Well, I think that's what certainly Black Man from the back, he's asking again. How should fathers discipline their sons when they start sizing you up and being rebellious? I mean, that's a time that, I mean, certainly if you got teenage sons, and like I said, how you raise sons might be different than how you raise daughters. And again, Jay Speed would certainly lean on his wisdom in that regard when you start getting a rebellious son. But I actually kind of liked, I think BME talked about that one time. Him and his son, they put the gloves on. Sort of like Fight Club. I honestly don't mind that as much. You start feeling yourself a little bit, and you want to, so Jay Speed said he did see a major difference in the way his children was raised. Using corporal punishment versus not using it. So again, thanks for that clarification. But I kind of like what he did. His son was kind of feeling himself a little bit. And they said, okay, let's get some gloves and let's go. And, his son wasn't quite as skilled in BMU dropping with a body shot. For some strange reason, parent. I don't mind that as much. Go ahead.
He's the second parent that I know who can do that. I'll explain to you why. My instructor raised his son. All right. So let's say a traditional household, it was not. They used to go literally hands-on at multiple times. I remember he got in trouble for something. I can't remember what exactly it was. I think he cheated on his test or something and got caught. They went hands-on. I mean, literally goes, get your gear on, wrap your fucking hands, and we're going to talk outside. Give me 1 second, Paul. My mom needs me really fast. I'll be right back, guys.
Okay, not a problem. Yeah, so I'll just entertain some of the chat in the meantime. So yes, the difference between the generations, again, 90s kids, the last generation of kids who got their butt tore up in public. And then again, said years ago, Steve Harvey said that white kids will embarrass their parents and black kids will embarrass their kids. Certainly we've seen some of that when they start smelling themselves. And again, JSP, should we go back to corporal punishment with our wives? Wow, that's a totally different subject there. But again, the point is, again, is there opportunity to evolve, or is there a way to be a better parent? Because again, a lot of times you might have got something, you didn't get necessarily the lecture afterwards or the reason why you were getting beat. And in Peter's case, he was saying he was getting beat for all kinds of reasons, earned or not earned, by teachers, by people who just wanted to mess with him. So again, what can that, or what does that do to an individual who's kind of getting that, drilled into them all the time at home, in school, or what have you? What does that do to, what does that do to people over time? And so again, I think if anything, I'm not going to say whether you should use corporal punishment or not. I'll just say what I did, and I'll stand on that, and I'll defend it. But are we still talking about the idea of parenting? Now, again, if you're one of those people, if you can use it in a judicious manner, if there is such a thing, where you can do it without anger, where you can have the talk with your kids afterwards as to why they did it, where if you can pair the discipline with the love, could it work? I'm not saying, I think it can in some cases. But again, you're asking a lot, especially when you're dealing with the pressures that you're dealing with. Now, again, I just speak for Black people specifically. We do have a lot of trauma, especially if you're ADOS. There is a lot of trauma that we're dealing with. How much of that trauma are we then inflicting on our kids? With all the other things that we have to deal with in the country. So, maybe this is just a call just to think about, is it always the best solution? Do I always have to reach for the belt or the ruler or something to get my point across? Do I have to walk around with, does it always have to be this? Or the first thing that your kid sees is, you reach for this before you have a conversation, or you set parameters or limits that allow them to do things differently. Does it always have to be the first and last line of defense? Because I think you can get very lazy in its use. And sometimes it could be just because you could be ticked off because of something that had nothing to do with the kid. Kid came in or whatever with an energy, but you were already feeling a certain way. And then you decided that, anything the kid was going to say that annoyed you, you were going to do something. Your kid gets a backhand just for, coming in exuberant because they were maybe, excited about something. I don't.
Are you saying parents are lazy to parenthood because they use corporal punishment instead?
I think if it's your first line of defense on every issue, yeah, I would say that I would think that's lazy. If that's your first resort. But what about communication? What about structure? What about things? How did it get to that point where that was the first line? Just hearing you talk, you were getting it from everybody. To an extent, I could say I'm thankful that you came out to be the person that you that you are, because you were getting it from all these authority figures who were just always for you said for some of them there was no reason for it. Mm-hmm. But that's how people, certainly people that I know that I've grown up around, that's kind of how it was. Sometimes just asking a question, not that you were challenging authority, but y'all were just saying, well, what was that? And it was like, don't talk back to me. You heard what I said or whatever, and you got a slap or something because, again, you were asking for clarity on something.
And you get that all the time. That's the fucked up part, because if you're just having a plain conversation like we are right now, and you got involved with a parent's conversation, like, boy, get your fucking ass over there right now.
Mm-hmm. Like, it just goes. It goes from 0 to 60 in like a second.
I remember one kid. Was a friend of mine's son, his brothers, and he would just. The kid was. I thought the kid was messing around. I still think to this day the kid was messing around. And the father of the kid, like, tell him, go sit over there or something like that. The guy, he goes joking around, nah! And he got up a 1 to 90, like, who's the boss? And he got his hand was right up there, like, you are. I'm like, oh, but he's a kid. You first, like you said, the first defense should not be your hand. It shouldn't be the bell. It shouldn't be your sandal. It should be your mouth. I was more scared with my fucking my dad's mouth, and my dad really didn't hit me as much, to be honest with you. But it was more my mom, not even my mom as much. I was not a thing about it. But I was more scared what they would do, not what they weren't do, if that makes sense. Like taking my PlayStation away or whatever. That was more or my car, or, I was driving. You know, even high school kids, we're stupid. We do stupid shit like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
so I want to contrast this here. So again, beatings. Yeah, I mean, so again, the difference between discipline and beatings. I was asking earlier, where do you draw the line? When does it become when does it become abusive, and when is it a useful form of discipline? And I think if you're dealing with the people who can't to tell the difference, or if you're dealing with some trauma that that is where you can't have that maturity to know the difference, then should you be using it, or are you causing more harm down the line from its use? Where do you draw the line? Go ahead, Pete.
As I was saying before earlier, but I had to go help my mom really fast. My best friend and his instructor, or my teacher, his father is our teacher. So when does he draw the line? Because he's there to teach him and me martial arts. So being a normal, average father is kind of out the goddamn fucking window at that point, in my opinion. So going for going for blow on a normal case is normal. He could say, I'm teaching him martial arts. It is, somebody shows up to the door. But somebody else who doesn't know better, I'm like, is this okay? Is that abuse? Is that too much? That's the question I want to ask. What is too much? What is too far? And when is not discipline? Is more like I'm just a fucking twisted fuck, and I want to beat the shit out of you. And there are a lot of
again, the circumstance here again. Braxton, that's Mr. Ben. Do you remember that episode, Dr. Phil, when the little fat boy smacked his mother live on TV? I don't remember that. I never saw that. But again, we got to ask the question. You mean to tell me, so this in a perfectly functioning world and environment, that a kid would just out the blue smack his mom on live TV? Or was that,
I don't think that was out of blue. I think that was
what created that scenario? And again, these are things we got to look at also. We got to look at what is creating these scenarios that allow for this behavior to happen. We all talk about in the African American community how many households are parented by black women, single. Where's the structure? Where's the male authority? That was the whole point of that video that I don't know if you saw on Friday, Pete. BMU played a video of a high school in Louisiana that was just plagued by violence. I mean, they showed videos of fights just breaking out all over the school. And some dads got together, some black fathers got together, and they formed a group that they were just going to be in the school. And it was just amazing how the level of violence just went down dramatically because these guys showed up. And they were going to make sure that kids got to school on time. They interacted with the kids. I mean, just their presence there. But again, if you're going to grow up in a household with a single parent, with no structure, no order, where the male isn't present, you said your dad didn't hit you. My dad never hit me, really. But again, because he was working most of the time, and again, my parents were split by the time I was born. They kind of broke up. So again, my dad didn't come back into my life until age 14. But sometimes I think we create, or we what's the word I'm looking for? We duplicate the dysfunction that then creates dysfunction. And then we use the same methods and tactics to try to deal with it, only to create more dysfunction. So it's almost like it's like a loop with us. And again, I'm asking a question. I think OG J Speed was asking a question as well. When do we stop doing things the same way, getting the same results? And so again, I think for parenting, I think, parents, I think really need to, contemplate, first of all, do you want to be parents? I've been saying this for a while. You know this. I said on your show. I think people really have to decide the most important question that you adults, young adults need to ask themselves. One, do I want to be married? Secondly, do I want to be a parent? And please don't be a parent if you don't want to be. How many people are parents out of accident? Oops, slipped up. Oops, decided to have the baby, but I can't, I don't believe in abortions, but, well, I don't know if I should say that, deletions, but I'm going to get a strike for that. But, how often do, children just show up and people haven't been prepared to be parents or want that?
Very, very, very easy solution if you don't want to be a parent. Just go to snip, snip. Something wrong with that. You know somebody who's some snip, right, Paul?
Oh, I am.
Oh, I was talking about King Smith, but okay, yeah, you are too.
Yeah, absolutely. I had my 3 and I'm out. Yeah, 3 and out. So that was definitely, I wasn't gonna have 6, 7 kids, and I certainly didn't want to be one of those parents. Like I got friends now that got a 25-year-old and a 10-year-old, or a 25-year-old and a 5-year-old. And I just didn't want, like, once my baby making days were over, I just said I'm done. So I wasn't gonna continue that. But again, we were intentional that we wanted to be parents,
and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, but that the accidental parent, or if you constantly grow up in a situation where, again, if you got a single mom with 3 kids by 3 different fathers or something like that, I mean, how is that a healthy environment to raise anyone in? And then if your only means or action because it was done to you is to reach for the belt or reach for this or reach for that, again, are you really creating healthy people? Are you growing adults in a healthy manner? So I think people really have to think about the environment that kids are being brought in. And because either the stresses, or you can't deal with the stresses, or you're just going back to, again, what you know, not looking at, can I do things differently? You may want to resort to that. Again, I mean, I'm not talking about those who can do it with discipline, with measuredness. I'm not talking about those kind of people. But if you're stressed, if you're angry, and that's just part of your world and your psyche and whatnot, and you're reacting more so than being proactive in how you go about disciplining your children, you could be passing on a lot of that. Whatever you're dealing with, you be passing that on to your kids. I believe that. So yeah. And then we also have to ask, certainly in the African American community, because so many black boys are being raised by single mothers, is that having a long-term impact on the relationships that we're able to form or not form? Because we've been talking about that in this space for 5 years now, in this YouTube space or whatever, about the dysfunction in relationships across all races and ethnicity of relationship. But in black community, we always talk about this.
You guys have been talking about 5 years. I've been into what, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. I'm into it now. What has changed? Has anything changed?
What do you mean? What has changed?
Talking about it? I'm sorry.
I'm saying, recite the question again.
We've been talking about it off and on for 5 years. BMU, myself, all of us. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, what has changed in 5 years? We keep talking about, but nothing.
Oh, as far as like, have relationships between men and women changed? No. I think there's certainly, I think, part of it is there's a desire to kind of keep the conversation going in some instances. But I think that, are people really doing the work to fix whatever it is that's in them so that they can have more healthy, positive relationships? I hope some people are taking advantage of that, or looking at least in this space and saying, look, I want to change. I want to do things differently. So if I want a different outcome than what I'm getting, then I need to do things differently. I hope that's happening for some. But I think the measure of that may not be measured for decades. But again, you do have people who are using these platforms to create content because, again, people like strife, people like drama. Are we working towards, a solution, or people taking the positive measures in effect? But again, it's the same thing with parenting. So again, you have dysfunctional relationships, and therefore you're going to have dysfunctional parenting. But it all starts with self. You have to do the work on yourself to make yourself a better person, how to deal with your trauma, your disappointments, your angers, whatever that's going on with you. So you can, again, start doing things differently and hopefully getting better outcomes, either with the person, your mate, or with your children. But for so long, certainly on my side of the in my community, the whole thing is like, mama's never wrong. You don't talk back to mama. You don't do, certain, she's always right. And, don't talk back, whatever. But again, she might be dealing with some stuff and inflicting that on you.
It's funny you say that. My mother. This is going to be a funny story for you guys.
Go for it.
So we're at the doctor's. And the doctor's telling him, listen, Mrs. Lewis says, you need to watch what you eat. You're gaining a lot of weight. You're also diabetic. You need to stay away from carbs. The doctor, my mom turned around to the doctor like, you have no fucking idea what you're talking about. Just like that. Mm-hmm. I looked at myself like, I can't believe she's just literally cursed at the doctor. Like, she goes, Mr. Lewis, why do you think that? Like, I know more than you. I've been to school 50 years ago. Ma, you never graduated. You never graduated your, nursing degree. Like, fuck off. She goes to me. And I'm like, okay. So the point of that story is she's going on and on how she's always right. You go tell my mom right now she's wrong, Paul. Mm-hmm. You might be getting a knuckle sandwich. Do you want to test out this theory?
Mm-hmm.
You want to come?
And that soon.
You're not brave enough.
I'm gonna treat your mom with the highest respect.
You don't have the balls.
Well, I just want to do it. I mean, why would I do that?
No, it's nothing. You can be wrong. Nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong in saying, "Hey, what, Mr. Lewis? I think you're wrong on that." That's all. And she's gonna like, "Huh?" I'm like, whoops. Yeah, no. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, there are always women in general. I'm going to hate for this. They hate when they hear they're wrong. Let's be honest here. You disagree, Paul?
Anecdotally, I mean, I think women could be a lot more stubborn in terms of, apologizing. But again, I would think of that anecdotally. I can't, I don't want to speak across the board, but.
No, I'm joking when I say that. I don't think all women are like that. But, a lot of women, the old school women, that, I'm talking about like my grandparents, probably hate when they had to be wrong. At least my grandma hated being wrong. She always wanted to be right. Mm. And both my mom and my grandma always want to be right, and they always want to be in charge.
Yeah.
Toxic sometimes too.
Yeah. Yeah, and that happens across board. But when we had our guy on from who lives in Asia, he tells about, everyone wants to go to Asia to find an Asian wife. But he said, once they get married, then, they take over the home. Everyone thinks, let me go to Thailand and get a wife or whatever. But, they could be very, aggressive after marriage. They're sweet up to marriage, and then they're
Bro, let's be honest here, dude. What is not to love about Asian women? They're beautiful women out there.
Oh, sure.
Asian women are drop dead gorgeous.
Right. But I guess the idea of like people saying, I want to go to Asia and get a more submissive woman or what have you. And again, the reality of it was, a guy was saying, well, after marriage, they'll play coy until you get married. And then it's like their home after that. So, our friend, he had shared that with us on a previous, show.
Yeah, I keep forgetting his name, man. What is his
name?
Jay,
it'll come up to me back in a minute. Yeah. What's that?
Jay, I think.
No, it'll come back to me in a minute. I'm just but let me ask you personally, how do you think that I guess impacted what you went through personally? Bless you. Bless you.
Sorry, guys.
No. So how do you think that all that hitting and tapping, how do you think, have you been impacted by that? Do you think, or is it?
Yeah.
In what ways? I mean, just if you could share a couple things, you don't get too personal if you don't want to, but
I don't give a shit. I get you guys want. I don't like. I'll strip down to the skin and bones, personal style. Yes, I know someone's gonna say pause in a minute. But no, so I was joking aside. Like, I am fucked up in the head, dude. I have a lot of issues. Let's be honest. Me and you have talked about this off camera. About in car ride going to Comic-Con, like
sure.
And I have some. I don't say. What's the word I'm looking for? Confidence issues sometimes.
Yeah.
When I'm confident, I'm on my game. But when I'm not, I'm down.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody's confident 24/7. Let's be honest. It took me years to get my confidence than what it is now. Some people call it cocky. Okay, call it cocky. Call it whatever you want. I don't give a shit. You know what? I don't give a shit. But what I do give a shit. Anybody who hits your kids. Again, I can't say my parents hit me. My parents didn't really hit me. It was more, was more important. Like everybody else was hitting me. Even my godfather. It builds a toll of you.
Mm-hmm.
You're the punching bag. And eventually, that shit hurts. When it hurts, it fucks your head up. People don't realize that. And I think they've done studies that recently too. No, I'm not mistaken.
Well, yeah, I mean, I cited a study that talked about, again, the unintended consequences. Because again, typically, when a lot of people talk about corporal punishment, they talk about the short term intended, what was intended short term and what's intended long term. So short term is simply just to kind of get the kids' attention. But then when you talk about long term and long term unintended consequences, then it talked about things like cognitive decline, that the kids didn't do as well on tests, on school tests and whatnot, lower IQ scores, just across the board. Because it kind of makes sense, because again, you're basically, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get compliance, but you're not necessarily teaching your kids necessarily how to think. Again, if how to reason, how to ration, was that a good decision or not? You're just saying basically obey your parents. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes, sir. No, sir. Are you giving them the tools to which they can come at least to their own conclusions about what is right and wrong, or the consequences? If I take this course of action, this will happen or not. The only consequences are, do I get disciplined or not? But it's not. Is it really teaching them how to go out and handle and reason, which is, again, is a form of intelligence? But it's just simply, if it's just about you do what I say when I say it, you come when I want when I want, don't talk back, don't ask questions, don't do this, is that, really, are you stunting an ability to for the child to develop properly when you do that? And I'm not saying that's how it's done in every situation, but again, I've had some of that myself, and I've known people who've gone through that, where it's just like, no discussion, even if the child may have a point, or it says, no, you did this, and it's like, no, I didn't, and they really mean they didn't do it, but you didn't even want to listen to them, or when they tried to explain themselves, you thought they were talking back to you, which then commanded the corporal punishment. So what you basically did was you're creating compliance, but you're not creating a functioning, independently thinking person. So again, I think, the article that I cited, it talks about some of those long-term consequences. And so it's definitely something, to it, I believe, where, the cognitive abilities are stunted. and you only think in a lot of times you think only in, you don't think in the gray area. Like your whole world.
You're in that moment, you don't think clearly. That is the problem. You're so mad. Man, I can't believe my son did that. Oh, my daughter. How dare she? Get over here.
Mm.
But you take, you know one thing I learned, even as my adulthood, I don't always practice it. I have my moments. I'm not perfect. Walk the fuck away. You're pissed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, guess what? That's called being human, dipshit. Walk the fuck away. Mm-hmm. Even let's say your daughter broke the TV. That happens. It's replaceable. Walk away. Mm-hmm. Because you're going to do something you're going to probably regret. Mm-hmm. You know what's a benefit of having cameras around the house? You know what's a benefit?
What's that?
You know what it's benefit? You can see when you're acting like a stupid idiot. You can rewind the camera back like,
you could see it. But again, how many times have criminals been caught on camera and still try to explain or justify what they're seeing? It's like, don't believe my lying eyes. So it doesn't matter, what you see or what have you. Like, but my wife and I, we kind of go back and forth. We're kind of snorers, and she says I snore. It's like you snore. She's like, I don't snore. That's like, all right, next I'm gonna record. The next time you snore, I'm gonna record you. And one time I almost had this happened a couple days ago. I almost had her because I came into the room and she's a light sleeper though. It's like you're not gonna tiptoe out the room or anything with her. So it's like I walk in and I can hear her snoring on the way up. It's like, this is my opportunity. So I get my phone out. I hit the record button. As soon as I walk in, it's like, it just stops. like that's, man, I missed an opportunity. But so she's still claiming to think I don't snore that much. You're the snorer. It's like, I'm saying maybe I do. I do have a deviated septum. So it's possible that I'm doing some snoring. But
one of my exes, I used to argue with her like, you and my dog snore as loud. She goes, no, you're fucking stupid. I'm gonna catch you on camera. She goes, no, you're not. I'm a light sleeper. And the nice thing about being a martial artist, you know how to sneak through buildings. I used my training. Right. I slid into it. Mm-hmm. It was my Samsung at the time. I took my phone out. I go. And it was my old dog. I was Hercules. And Hercules just snore. I'm like, loud. I go, I'm recording now. And you hear, go. I'm like, this is a classic. This is like I was like, oh, I should post this on YouTube. My first video.
Yeah, I've done that with my dog also. I put his snoring on IG.
So, bro, it wasn't my dog. It was both my girlfriend and my dog at the same time.
Oh man, stereo. You got it in stereo.
It was like one's going up.
Yeah, 5.1 Dolby surround sound. Yeah.
I'm like, the fuck is this shit, man?
Yeah. But again, even with that, like you can say all that stuff to a parent or whatever, and again, if they're in their feelings or they're defensive, they're not gonna, even if you catch them right, they're not gonna believe you. I mean, so
I
again,
personally like the whole camera thing because I have lost my shit at times, and I rewinded it. I want to see I know I'm fucking right, man. I know it. I look back like, holy shit, I'm a jerk. I'm an asshole. I was right about the situation, but I acted like a jerk.
Yeah.
So guess what I did, Paul?
You apologize?
Bingo. You know what? That's what makes you a bigger man, I think. Man up your mistakes.
Well, again, shout out to OG because he brought that point up earlier. Again, he had used corporal punishment with his kids. And he noticed certainly the difference in their development, and he went back. He actually manned up and he apologized to his kids for using it in those ways. I mean, again, how many parents, especially black parents, how many parents are going to go back and say, "I apologize for using that with you"? A lot of them would say, "Oh, well, if they beat you wrong, say, oh, you probably had it coming at some point or another. Yeah, I might have been wrong about this one, but you probably had one coming down the line. So so just take it as one that the one that I didn't catch is probably the one you got." I mean, I used to hear those kind of explanations back in the day as well. Again, so for it's for a lot of parents difficult to admit that they've done things wrong, but again, it is a high form of humility and introspection when you can admit your faults, especially to those who you parented. And even to this day, if I wrong my kids, I apologize. I have no problem apologizing to my kids if I was wrong about something or I was wrong about how I handle something. I have absolutely no issue with that. I have no problem apologizing to my wife if I offend her in some kind of way. Now, getting her to apologize, it's gotten better. I would say that. It's gotten better over the years. But certainly, yeah, getting her to apologize for something, it's like, I ain't do nothing wrong. No, it's not me. Even though I got the evidence, I got the receipts, I can play back in my head what you said and things like that. It's like, oh, well, look, So, her, she'd just be like, just assume to forget it. But just want to go to some more comments. So, Braxton, how do you even know about this movie? Because this movie traumatized a lot of kids, especially myself. This movie came out, Mommy Dearest, had actress Faye Dunaway, and she played the role of Joan Crawford in that movie. And she had an adopted kid, and she was psychotic. This was my life. I remember watching this movie when it came out in 1981. It was on CBS. I remember it vividly because this is kind of what I was going through growing up. The schizophrenia, the hallucinations, the overreaction, again, depending on what the state is. A lot of times my mom's the sweetest woman in the world. But a lot of times she would get into that Jekyll and Hyde or whatever, and sometimes I go home, I don't know what I was going to get. But this movie, I remember the whole thing. Yeah, no hangers. The woman flipped out because the daughter hung her sweaters on wire hangers, and she just went ham. Flipped out on her daughter, just over just like the littlest of things. And so, definitely monstrous, towards her daughter, all kinds of things that can really affect the person's development. And
you shouldn't be scared to go home.
What's that?
Case. You shouldn't be scared what to go home to.
Sometimes I was. Well, it wasn't to the degree where I was scared to go home. You just didn't know what you were going into. Like, she could be fine for like a week or two. And then all of a sudden I would go home and it would like, she wouldn't let me in the door because she would say, "Where's my son? You're not my son. You're a clone of my son. My real son is out there somewhere. Who are you? You're not my son." Sometimes I would come home to that because, again, you just didn't know when stuff was going to flare up, what triggered it, or what have you. But, yeah, it could be like night and day, and then it would just kind of go away, and then, you just sort of wait for the the next thing to come up.
How did you handle that at that age?
I don't know. I took it. It
was normal.
I kind of not normal. I knew it wasn't normal, but there was nothing to be done at the time. It wasn't really until, again, my dad came back into my life at 13, going on 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Is where my oldest sister, I got to give her credit because she stepped up and be like, "Look, Mom is not in a good way, and you need to come back." Because what happened was I was living with my sister, which wasn't the most tenuous situation to live in. But again, she kind of took me for a minute. My dad, he was kind of in a stupor, so to speak, and she pulled him out. She's like, "Look, you got a son who needs you." Because he raised basically all my younger siblings. So my brother is older than me by almost 7 years. And so all four of my older siblings, they all kind of grew up together. They're like 2-3 years apart. So they kind of grew up together. My dad at one point in time took care of all of them. I was the only one who kind of stayed with my mom that whole time until about age 13, 14. Then my sister comes in and she kind of steps in. In fact, I had another sister who came in. She took me temporarily as well. But my older sister was like, "Look, he needs his father." So she went and basically dragged him and put him in a situation. "Look, you're going to take your son and you're going to live, get out of this environment that you're in, and you're going to give him a stable environment so he can, and give him what he needs." And that's what happened. Certainly, again, it wasn't pleasant all the time. I mean, he had his issues with alcohol and stuff, but again, it was a much more stable environment than the one I was in. And you asked me how I got through some things. A lot of it was just my pastimes. So again, the Hangout Show, why I'm a fan of all those old cartoons back in the day and TV shows and 80s and things of that nature in the 70s. I kind of threw myself into those things to kind of escape, what I was going going through, certainly during those times. And then when I got with my dad, then it was sports and video games and all kinds of other things that I just kind of threw myself into. But again, the environment was stable enough to where I remember my grades were really dropping in that time. Like the last year or so with my mom, like it was getting to a point where it was like I didn't care anymore. It was kind of like that kind of thing. And but again, once I got into a different environment, new school, new environment, things turned around. And I was able to kind of, get things going, and I knew kind of, things I wanted to kind of get into. And, it definitely, that change of environment definitely helped. But again, I didn't experience, now, verbal abuse, that's another thing. I'm only talking about corporal punishment here. My father be the first one to say, boy, you ain't ish. He'd be the first one to tell me that, like, all the time. And
that's worse sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, certainly, verbal abuse, was certainly there. My brothers, he kind of gave it to me a little bit as well, because I was very smart. I was a nerd. So yeah, I was kind of bookish, but I didn't necessarily have a lot of common sense. And these guys were all about, I guess they valued that over book smarts or intelligence or whatever. But yeah, they would say, yeah, you smart, but you don't know anything. So it was that kind of environment. Just want to get some, that phrase in ADO, something like you pay the bill, so you pay a bill up in there. Yeah, definitely. Just to go to some, Whitman's was served breakfast, lunch, and dinner midnight. Yeah, but we were well fed. Miss Ben, Faye Dunaway. So yeah, that was a brutal time back in the day, but it was something that and you have older parents, so you get that old school as well. And the wire part, but I got beat with wires too, so I remember that wire hangers. Certainly remember those kind of beatings as well. Shout out to my man Anton. Certainly in the building tonight. Jersey, stand up. Certainly good to see you. Certainly good to see you tonight. And absolutely. So so we've been talking about it. I mean, I would love to get your perspective tonight. Certainly on its use. Now I know you have, Anton. I know you have a large family, and you have as far as a very diverse family in terms of age ranges. So you got kids who are older, and then you also have young children as well. And certainly I wouldn't mind, getting your views on, I guess, the use of corporal punishment in your home, or have your views on corporal punishment changed over the years since your oldest to now. But we've been having this conversation tonight. Like I said earlier, I've never used corporal punishment with my 3 daughters. My youngest one is 21, never used it. Not a big proponent of it, quite frankly. But certainly I respect people's right to parent their children. And certainly if you use that, certainly I clearly get it. I come from that. And so I understand it very well. But certainly, wouldn't mind, getting your insights, as we, come to the end of the show. But what do you think then, Pete, as far as let's look ahead. Let's look 10 years from now. You're married with kids 10 years from now. What's your stance going to be? Corporal punishment, for it, against it, modified? How do you think you would employ its use?
Modify only in case of emergencies.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, well, break that down a little bit.
Like, okay, if they did something so horrible, so bad, like, I have no choice. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say they got into my gun safe, for example, and they know they're not supposed to be in there. Okay, that's a really bad example, but you get the idea.
Yeah, how would they get in there?
Okay, even better. They destroy one of my autographs.
Autograph?
Can't replace. What's up?
An autograph? You would go ham over an autograph?
Bro, you can't replace these autographs. Some autographs you cannot replace them. Like JDF, who has passed, I can't replace that autograph. Like some things you can't replace. Let's be honest here, dude. Or they fried my PC. $10,000 down the drain. Like, it has to be something so extreme, so bad, you give me no choice.
Right.
And
but again, again, this is I'm asking you, so I'm not going to push back on what you said you would do. So again, no. Precious, I guess, what you would consider antiques or precious artifacts or whatnot that you've collected, any damage to those, certainly you reserve the right to its use.
Yeah. So whatever the case it was, it depends what was the crime has a pay. What was it saying? If you do the crime, you gotta do the punishment kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
If the crime equals the punishment, yes, I don't. But it can't be to the point that I'm beating the shit out of my child. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the father's voice is more scary than a hand.
Oh, sure. Or like I said, do you have a look?
I am the look.
Yeah, you got to have a look. There's got to be a look that there's got to be a look that you develop so that when you use it, it penetrates their souls and gets down into and it's like they're hanging on to their bladders are hanging on as a result of that.
And let's say I have a stare. I don't have a look. I have a stare.
Mm-hmm. The death stare. It's like Medusa, right? You give them the stare and they turn to stone. You got to have one of those.
Similar. Let's say it's similar to that. Mm. It's Greek related. I give them the Kronos King 300 Leon. It's like, I'm gonna fucking kill you now.
Yeah. I want to go back to something Anton said. So again, this doesn't surprise me. Africans, Caribbeans, or whatnot. All these things have been done. If you would join us early in the show, I had shared some information that corporal punishment pre-colonial Africa really wasn't something that was used. That corporal punishment came with missionaries going to Africa, and they kind of introduced it to it, and it kind of propagated throughout the continent. So it doesn't surprise me that certainly that corporal punishment was used certainly by parents growing up, but you as a father and disciplinarian, how do you use it? Is it something? Have you modified its use since what it was used in your household, or do you use it at all? Certainly, I want to just get an idea from people who both came through the experience and then what you're doing now, or you simply continue the trend. I mean, like Braxton, he's all for it. He grew up with that. He had older parents who come from that generation, and certainly it seems like it's there for him. I know Mandrell's in the building tonight. Shout out to him for popping on in. Would love to gotten your perspective on this tonight. Again, my man's a married man. Not sure if kids are still in the future for him, but again, use of corporal punishment in his case. So I'll be interested in hearing what he has to say about that. And so what are we talking about tonight? Is just Noah's not related to Carmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf, but we are talking about the use of corporal punishment, good, bad, and different. Are you for it or not? If you grew up with it, do you intend to use it with your children? Because one thing that we are seeing across the board, it seems like the use of corporal punishment is going down. Again, some people are saying to it's a good thing, and some people are saying it's not a good thing because you're saying, well, we're getting outcomes that are different than what is expected. So it's definitely this is the conversation we're having tonight. Again, respect everyone's views on this. I'm not trying to necessarily change people's minds, but again, wasn't something that my wife and I used, and we wouldn't take it back. We were kidding with my daughter the other night. She says that's something dumb or whatever. So says that we should have used corporal punishment. We should have beat you. And we all kind of had a chuckle about it. But again, it's just something that we didn't practice in our household. So Anton says one method that my parents would do, they stopped talking in English. Oh, you got yeah. So yeah. There's nothing like when your parents curse you out in their mother tongue, especially if it's not. If
it doesn't work in my case because I know the mother tongue.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah. So we just want sharing perspective tonight. So Marcus jumped in late, and we encourage anyone who came in tonight. Make sure you hit the like button as you come in. Certainly helps the algorithm on the channel. Make sure you certainly drop either a Cash App or a Super Chat to us. It really helps us out. And again, just go back and play the show. We had a lot of people. I know Pete, was tied up with some things, but I think this is a conversation that that we need to have. Is the way that it was done has to be the way that it has to be done now, and that's certainly a question that we're all sort of entertaining at this time. But I want to get Anton since I did ask So I disciplined my children with corporal punishment, but I modified it. It's a combination of traditional Haitian and what I learned in the Army. Interesting. That might be a combo. Listen, we're going to have a call-in show for everybody on call-in show next week. So we'd love to get some additional perspective. Those who want to, so those who want to, Easter Sunday. Oh, you want to take off? We can take off. That's not a problem.
It's up to you. You make the call.
I'm available usually around that time of night. I'm typically available. Usually if I'm out, we do like brunch or something like that, and then we're done. So I can still do the show. Let me know if you want to still do the show on Easter Sunday. I'm open to it, but if you want to take a week off, whatnot. But regardless, the next show that we do will again be a call-in show. And so again, I would love to get Anton's perspective in terms of what he used or how he uses corporal punishment. I know Mandrell said it's stealing from me. I'm not raising a thief. Corporal punishment was common. Yeah, for most of us, if you're Gen X, definitely baby boomer. But if you're even an older millennial, absolutely. Said I had to be mindful when, like for me, I only got tapped with a switch and never had to go pick one myself. You didn't get that old school. Yeah, go get me a switch. Yeah, you didn't get that. But the next show we do will be a call-in. So if not next Sunday, it'll be the Sunday after. You can certainly call, coming up. We love to have and chop it up with you guys. Certainly on this, Marcus. Certainly love to get your views on this as well. On its use, or again, if you think you're going to be a parent in the future, how would you use it? But I think a lot of people are saying, the idea of getting the big, thick 3-inch belt with the 1/2-inch wide and almost like the weightlifting belts that the bodybuilders use now, whatever.
Some people go to extremes, like one little slap does it, but when you do it multiple, that's where it gets abused, I think.
Indeed, yeah.
But anyway.
So we're at the end of the show. We appreciate you guys going on. Again, I would encourage anyone go back and look at the information that I shared earlier. And again, but you make up your own conclusions on that. You, like I said, you can look at that and say, look, that's all bunk. Again, I did post in the chat the link to the video that I had. In fact, I'll just put it here again if I can. Let me see if I could just, I'm just going to share this video that I played. Apparently there was something on the audio, so I wasn't sure. So I'm not sure why I couldn't play it earlier, but I do want to share the link to the video and you guys can kind of go back and look at it. But she cites some research when it comes to what the data, the metadata is saying about its use and the consequences of using it, especially when it comes to like cognitive functions and abilities. Again, I just dropped it in the chat again. So if anybody wants to go back and just watch that video. But again, a lot of the information that I cited and found in doing research for this show, again, some of that aligns with what was being shared. But I wanted to get Anton's last point through the show. So I had to be mindful with my eldest two, both were foster care, and the younger ones was younger three, no issues. So again, your circumstances, what the kid is coming from, the environment that they're growing up in, the trauma that they might have had going into it. A lot of factors. But again, for parents to at least think about what you're doing, especially in the moment, and then going back. Maybe you did overreact. Do you have the capacity to go back and apologize to your kid saying, hey, I overreacted, that was too much, I'm sorry. Is there a capacity to do that? Or are you going to be like, well, parents don't apologize? So if you have that kind, but some that act like that. So, but with that, any final thoughts, Pete? And again, certainly glad you were able to make it on tonight. And again, hope everything is going well. But we can chat after the show and get caught up if need be. But any last words before we close out the show tonight?
It's gonna be a long week. No, I really don't. I'm definitely planning to be here next week. My bad, guys. Sometimes life happens. I gotta, once in a while.
No apologies.
Ghost of Sparta has me the ghost of everything. So, except that, I don't have much. I will be reposting this on my channel once it's down, fully, up in there and everything. Except that, guys, I'll see you guys next week. Get your notebooks out, get your pen out, get your questions ready.
Yeah, go back, look back. You guys all should have a playlist.
Shit, I'm in the chats.
You guys should have a playlist of all the gray area shows, and you should be adding all the shows to your playlist and go back and you can just do you can just go back and do a watch party and look at all the former shows that we did, and anything that you want to bring up, you're certainly more than welcome to come up and chat it up with us. But for that, again, I am Mr. Bennett with my partner as always. Uh-oh. No sound. But let me try my best. This is Sparta. How's that?
Yeah, close enough.
I'll try. I did my best. And yeah, definitely. Yeah. So the topic next week, again, it's going to be a call-in show. So again, call in any topics that we talked about before. You're open to come up and chat it up with us. Just to come say hi to us. But today's topic was corporal punishment specifically. And so, again, if you have any insights on that, you can certainly come back and talk about that with us. The last show, I can't remember. What was the last show we talked about? What was last week's show? I can't remember now. I just had a brain fart right now. I'm trying to remember.
Which one?
The last week. What did we talk about?
Give me a second. I'll go back now.
Yeah. Look at
Dude, I'm freaking old like you.
Yeah, I take my ginkgo biloba and get my supplement in, and or maybe I just need more sleep. That'll help too. But yeah.
The marriage one, the interfaith marriage.
Oh yes, interfaith marriage. Yes, interfaith marriage. So again, we had a good conversation. The chat was very active last week, talking about what happens when Christians and non-Christians marry, that sort of thing, or any kind of mix of religious and non-religious people. Can those marriages last, and do they work? So absolutely, we can chop that up and talk about that. So again, any prior topic, no questions out of bounds, and we look to have some of you guys hop on with us and chop it up, and let's just have a good time. And but until the next time, I'm Mr. Bennett. He is the Ghost of Sparta, and this has been the Gray Area. You guys enjoy the rest of your week. Take care. God bless. And we will see you next time. But I got to put a video in here first before I do that. So let me see if I could. I got to find the outro. Where's the outro? The outro.
You're killing me.
I got it. Okay, so here we go.
Where's Bossman when I need him?
Because sometimes it's in here and sometimes it's not. That's the problem. But I think
we're safe. Good. Help. So Bossman. But I think we should. Any of you two knuckleheads, help them, please.
But we're good now. You guys have a great night. Take care.